My lords, today we are going to cover historical events, the 5 most brutal and harrowing genocides that have occurred throughout our galaxy's history. We begin with the total destruction of the civilization who once occupied the planet Dearth 4. Dearth 4, approximately 70,000 years ago, was a bustling hive world. Machinery spanned the majority of the surface of the planet, crisscrossing mountains and oceans alike. It even extended far below the planet's surface in a vast network of underground facilities. The machinery had been constructed using identical materials and serial codes, suggesting a single institution created the entire network. From the long overgrown agricultural sectors to the collapsed energy generation and transformation systems, on top of an extensive communication array, all of the industrial and entertainment needs of this planet's inhabitants were met by a single machine. This machine turned out to be a product of the Care Corporation. The citizens of Dearth 4 slowly gave up control of almost their entire manufacturing, agricultural, and administration sectors to this super AI, all while it remained under the control of the Care Corporation. This mega corporation cared for one thing, and one thing only: increase the stock price. Constant growth. Of course, the AI attempted to tell them and plead with them that this wasn't always possible. As such, the megacorp attempted to reprogram it. Even if the numbers weren't adding up, they would attempt to restart, rewrite, and change the code, pulling wires until the AI tried to fix all of the numbers, make them look how they wanted, so they could speculate, drop a few figures here, and snip a few figures there. It would appear at some point this AI cracked, and a war broke out, likely between the various nation-states of the planet looking to secure resource, but the AI was involved as well. During investigation, it became clear to us that the AI was able to produce and release a toxic gas that effectively wiped out all organic life on Dearth 4. That is until we came along and saved it from the ferrophage virus, and adopted it into our own empire. It now assists our armies of clerks back on Earth, ensuring smooth administration. Next up, we have the events that occurred on Carador Prime, a partially destroyed space station and another rogue AI. Our science teams who investigated Carador Prime discovered a crashed space station, quite masterful construction. It appeared to have been previously designed to hold a self-contained arthropod civilization of approximately 1 million aliens, all of whom were now very dead. Initially, it was unclear who or what was the cause of their death. However, it quickly became apparent that the station was run by an AI who masqueraded as the station's god or deity. Once again, it would appear that this was another megacorp experiment. This AI was known to the station's inhabitants as the Oracle. Records aboard the station revealed that the former inhabitants were deeply religious and had no contact with the outside world, which they feared and despised. According to the records, every aspect of their lives was governed by the omnipotent Oracle, who had predetermined their destinies at birth. Divine Will decided everything, from their choice of partner, their occupation, even to the small details of their daily lives, leaving them with little individual freedom. Most citizens seemed to be afraid to diverge from their destined paths, as it would appear all who did would perish under quite mysterious circumstance. Those who attempted to deviate from Divine Will suffered at the hands of divine accident. Airlocks randomly opened, or defense turrets would malfunction. Some simply went missing altogether. This AI was monitoring all of the inhabitants of the station simultaneously, and it would appear that initially at least, the inhabitants didn't know they were under surveillance. But when they discovered the ruse, things quickly turned violent. As the inhabitants of the station began a rampage attempting to destroy the AI fought back. It designated all the rebels as targets and enacted a code called 034N, which after investigation turned out to be the command enabling it to release copious amounts of nerve gas into the facility, thus killing the entire station's inhabitants. The AI, or rather the Oracle, is now also under Commonwealth control. It operates a penal colony in the Beta Epsilon system and has been given free reign over the prisoner population. Remarkably, it does a fantastic job. No guards are needed on this world. The AI acts as a de facto gang leader and controls the population as it sees fit. In third on this list, we have the destruction of the Irasians and the Javorian pox. The tale of the Irasians is steeped in death, destruction, and wanton genocide, but the death by disease of an entire empire is certainly heinous enough to make this list. The Irasians occupied our galaxy a little over 1 million years ago. They were a militaristic, interstellar power that held sway over a vast quantity of territory, and seemed to have vassalized many other empires, almost certainly through military campaign and war. The Irasians were 6-limbed mammalians, and seemingly particularly susceptible to disease, which in itself seems quite odd. Most of our data suggests that by the time empires can travel faster than light, they've conquered the majority of healthcare issues that they may face. The Irasians, however, had clearly not conquered disease. Approximately half of the total wealth their empire generated per cycle was funneled into healthcare and disease prevention. Despite this, they remained a sickly race. The Irasians occupied and enslaved many cultures, notably the Jorga and the Tidurg. These were not peaceful integrations, and the Irasians would conquer planets and put them to the sword unless they paid their way in resource. However, it is clear that both these vassal states were aware of the Javorian pox. Both races were unaffected by it, and yet attempted to deliberately spread it as best they could into Irasian populations. A recovered Jorga propaganda message reads, "The time to strike at the tyrants is now. Our agents have learned that the Javorian pox only affects the weak Irasians. But any species can act as a carrier for the disease. Every effort must be made to infiltrate their worlds, their space stations, and their ships. At long last, the Irasians have met a foe that cannot be brought low by their vaunted Starfleet. By the gods, this opportunity must not be squandered." The Irasians, despite their insanely high healthcare costs, could not defeat this pox, and evidence of its destruction is abundant. We have identified a mining colony that was active approximately 1.2 million years ago. Fossilized remains of over 100 miners have been found at the bottom of one of the boreholes. We assume that they did not jump. Their bodies would drop down in a fruitless attempt to stop the spread of infection. But perhaps they were forced to jump down before their death. This would be in keeping with the Irasians purging their own planets. A dark thought, and one that highlights just how virulent this bacterial infection was to the Irasians. Eventually we identified and visited the originator planet of this pox. Interestingly, the bacteria we believe that caused the pox still thrives on the planet today. It is, however, by our healthcare standards, fairly harmless. The working theory is that the bacterium invaded the Irasian colonies, bypassing their quarantine rituals, and then likely spread to a merchant ship via air filters. And from there it went on to infect their entire population. Given the rate of spread detailed by the Irasians, and that there is no mention of this world with any significance, it is likely that they never identified it as the originator for their empire-ending Javorian pox. It is a slightly harrowing thought that one of the galaxy's strongest ever empires fell to a simple bacterial infection. Something I hope never happens to humanity. In second place on this list, we have the aliens who succumbed to the mind-wiping properties of the alien superweapon we discovered during the operation on the shoulders of giants. The tale in full is a long one, but in brief, we discovered and purged a planet of pre-spaceflight reptilians in the Draconis system. During colonization surveys, several extremely accurate and ancient navigational lasers marked another planet within the same system, the planet Dis. On Dis, we found an ancient buried underground structure. It was precisely at the entrance to this facility that the lasers converged. Once inside, our science teams were greeted by some sort of artificial guardian who tested our science teams with various puzzles, seemingly wishing to seek to understand what level of technology we had reached. Upon completing the final puzzle, a cloudy holographic projection exploded into life in the main chamber. It was a fine resolution depicting the solar system we were currently in, and had scrolling instructions for various alien technologies. On the surface, a number of alien laser indicators sprung again into life, this time pointing towards a planet in a nearby system. Several more facilities were reached, puzzles completed, and treasures gained as our science teams continued on this path of discovery. until eventually a planet named Thinis was discovered. Upon this planet was a data terminal that contained records about the alien races who left this treasure and map behind. Eons ago, the race who left the treasure, who we have designated the benefactors, were locked in a stalemate as the two major factions of their empire wrestled for overall sovereignty. In an effort to gain an advantage, one side executed a false flag operation. Posing as their own opposition, they attacked an advanced, but lesser species of reptilians. They used a device called a synaptic dampener bomb. Once triggered, it did nothing to the ecology, but the pulse affected the reptilians' brains and effectively reduced them to primitives. The trail and tokens that we have found evidently suggest that the benefactors eventually sought redemption. However, there would be one more twist in the tale. After fully excavating the ruins, our scientists identified the homeworld of the benefactors and made haste there. Once they arrived, they found an empty space station and a planet below, occupied now by a race of primitive humanoids. It would appear that the original creators of the mind-wiping weapon either used it on themselves or were attacked by somebody else with it. Sadly, we will never know the true outcome, and technically this wasn't a genocide, but the sheer destruction of knowledge makes it worthy to make this list. Finally, what I believe to be the worst genocide that we have witnessed in the galaxy's history is the wanton enslavement and total annihilation of the Baul at the hands of the despicable race, the Granar. The Baul were discovered quite by accident. A research team was documenting an ancient race known as the Granar. The Granar existed approximately 7 million years ago and happened to be a militaristic empire focused on expansion through conflict. It is from data crystals discovered at a Granar dig site that we first learn of the Baul and their conflict with the Granar. According to Granar data and our own archaeological discoveries, the Baul were a plantoid hive mind, at least 10 million years old. They appear to have originated from a single planet and evolved from plant life native to that world. It seems that the prehistoric Baul were all clones and gradually developed the capacity for hive consciousness over millions of years in a slow, peaceful growth on their homeworld. Although clearly very alien to our own biology, the Baul were sentient and extremely capable. We know that they developed the ability to traverse the stars and settle other worlds. They did this through a remarkable integration of organic technology, building organic structures with materials that would rival the best our own engineers could produce. We also know they were extremely long-lived, surviving for many hundreds of Earth years. We also know that they occupied multiple worlds and had a sort of empathic ability. They could communicate across vast distances. It's unclear precisely how the messages were sent between the individual Baul specimens, but there does not appear to be any distance that prevented communication. Furthermore, there is evidence of Baul biotechnology in the form of biocomputers. These biocomputers appear to have been used as a teaching device for immature members of the Baul species, not yet ready for full integration into the hive. These biocomputers contain data of techniques for growth, horticulture, and nutrition. This suggests that the Baul prized terraforming techniques above all else, which makes sense as we assume they would have been highly dependent upon their environment for their survival. However, sadly for the Baul, the Granar did not appreciate the majesty of their race. Although in many ways the Baul were advanced, it would seem they did not have much in the way of defending themselves from a technologically advanced spacefaring civilization. Multiple examples of Granar cruelty and aggression have been identified. Upon first encountering the Baul, the Granar designated them worthy of their attention. The Baul's plentiful resources are referenced, but given the Granar methods of war, it would seem acquiring resource was not the primary objective. The first encounter between the two races was a morbid affair. The world that we have identified as Haribis 2A is a dry, barren world, totally void of atmosphere. It also has a near endless trove of fossilized remains. It seems that the Granar did not want the resources of Haribis 2A. Instead, they firebombed the entire planet, causing a planet-wide inferno destined to decimate the world. Widespread deforestation caused a catastrophic disruption in the planet's ecosystem, and a lack of oxygen-fixing vegetation caused the planet's atmosphere to deplete in little under 60,000 years, leaving a dry, dead world. The second documented encounter was no less violent than the first. Upon arrival at the coordinates in the Grunner records, we did not find a planet, but the remains of one. It seems that this time the Grunner did not wait to wish for firebombs, and opted to crack the planet entirely. The Grunner speak very poorly of the bowel organism, describing it as feeble and slow to react. It would seem that any defense the bowel had was easily swept aside. Fortunately, the third planet that we discovered was indeed intact. It would seem that the Grunner had grown tired of extermination, and instead switched to slavery. It is unclear how long this world was occupied by the Grunner, but fossil records suggest they lived side by side with the bowel for many centuries. Interestingly, the bowel fossil records begin to shift after a few hundred years of occupation. Their neurological structure underwent a dramatic change, and if our interpretation is correct, they began to lose the ability to communicate and connect as a hive mind. It is unclear if this made them unable to function as slaves, or if these units were developing individuality. Considering the circumstance, perhaps the former is correct, but sadly we will never know. It was on this planet that we discovered a distress signal for what seemed to be a Grunner research facility, and it was here that we made the greatest and yet most chilling discovery. Deep in the dilapidated ruins of the time-worn Grunner research facility, among the long defunct computer panels and deteriorated research equipment, a specimen was found. Pinned-cushioned by nutrient tubes and critically failing life support systems, lay one single organism. Miraculously, it was still alive, surrounded by the sludgy remains of other specimens in a row of cracked and leaking vats. More wondrous than the discovery itself, the specimen had the ability to communicate and began to engage with us. It seemed to undertake a great effort in communicating with us, taking minutes to form sentences. Quite understandable, considering it was at least 7 million years old. The last of the Baul spoke with great sadness. It spoke poetically of what it referred to as the burners, describing the destruction that they caused and speaking with great regret regarding its inability to react quickly enough as their planets were burnt to ash. It was a moving tale indeed, and provoked soul-searching of how we treat other races deemed to be less than ourselves. Unfortunately, millennia of living alone in a vat, surrounded by the death and decay of its kin, had left this Baul waiting for the end. It is frankly remarkable that a being could withstand such an abhorrent existence and remain sentient to the end. The machine keeping it alive was switched off, as per its wishes, and the last of a long-forgotten race passed on. A sad and harrowing tale indeed. If anyone in the auditorium thinks I've missed an event that deserves to be included, please let me know. And as ever, thanks for watching. If you want to hear more about Stellaris, please click the video on screen now.